Yeah, greetings, and I want to say Jambo Baragani to everybody, and welcome to another new year. The topic today we'll be looking at is the way forward, and in that we'll be reflecting on 2020. As we know, 2020 was a very traumatic year. So then we'll be looking at 2021. So as usual, before we go into our topic, I'd like to go over to Ndogi Imani, who will be changing the vibrations for us. So Ndogi Imani.
Yeah. Asante Sana, Ndugu means brother in Kiswahili, and that's the language that the organization has adopted because of the Sixth Pan-African Congress in 1972 said that if there was going to be an entity, something like a United States of Africa, that the lingua franca, the language to be used, is Kiswahili, but it's used by so many Africans across the continent and in the diaspora. So we adopt that language. Yes, my name is Ndugu Imani. I'm a member of Pan-African Congress Movement and an African spiritual life coach. And so I'm now going to take you through a ritual that we perform at the beginning of our meetings, something that I do personally every day. But this particularly created for us when we're in cyberspace, where we don't have the pleasure of being in contact with each other. Okay, so as is the way with all African spirituality, we're not talking about religion and dogma. We're talking about consciousness raising and opening our awareness about who we truly are. And that's not about coercion. You can't fool someone to understand who they are. So if you just want to watch and observe, that's absolutely fine, no pressure. If you do want to take part, there's the information that's, I say in Kiswahili or Kemetic terms, is in translation English. So absolutely feel free, but there's no need to anyone to feel necessary to take part if they don't. It's about love and understanding and feeling comfortable with ourselves and resurrecting our tradition and our culture. Okay, so I will begin, but before I do, and Pepukayi, you'll need to unmute if you're going to need to take part. Asante. And before I begin, I need to ask you, Elder, may I proceed?
Permission granted.
Asante Sana. Okay. So I'll just share my screen. Okay, oops, now what's going on here? All right, okay, I can see you and I can see you. Okay, right, fine.
Yeah, it seems like there's temporarily in day mine is frozen, so I think he's just gone out to come back in. So just give him a few seconds. Just I think while we're waiting for Imani to get back in, I think it should be, so it must be having some technical problems there. So while we're waiting for Imani to get back in, I think it's best if we just, because as you know, this changing of energy is very important to the start of the meeting. That's why we'll give him some time to try and get back. Nothing so far. So I think what we will do in that case then, because I'm not sure how severe the technical hitch is. So I think at this point then we'll take the opportunity to proceed with the meeting. And today I have with me Sister Kandake, as you can see, and Elder Pepukayi, together with Ndugu Imani. So I would like to start with Sister Kandake. Hold on, Brother Imani is coming back. Okay, he's back in.
I'm back.
Yeah. Yes.
Starting to go on, with technical, but whatever happens, technical or not, we're going to continue, just like we did at
okay, that's brilliant.
Yeah, so we're going to continue. So, okay, right. So, take two. I'll start to do it again.
Share the screen.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. Share. All right. Yeah. Okay, Ndugu, it should be there for you to share.
Yep.
Okay, beautiful. Okay. Right, so this is called Mabadili Koya Nishati, change of energy in Kiswahili. Okay, so but what we were doing, first of all, is to get ourselves into the right frame of mind, to be present. And so that we move away from where our enemies want us to be, which is to be animalistic and emotional and reactive, but be able to be in full command of our physical aspect and our spiritual aspect, and our breath is that link between the two. So we're going to breathe together, and spiritually we'll do that 4 times. 4 is a spiritual number for abundance, and for wealth and health, and for stability. Like a table has 4 legs, a room has 4 walls. It's about ability, strength, and foundation. So very good for the beginning of the year and the first Umoja session of the year. So when we breathe out, we pull the stomach in and breathe out through our nose, forces air out of our lungs, and then we relax the stomach and we breathe in through our noses, and that's 1 cycle. So if you wish to take part, please then sit straight in wherever you are, if you can. Your spine is straight so that your 7 energy centers that the Hindu Kush called chakra are in line. Feet flat on the floor, and your palms on your thighs of your legs. And so our counts to keep in Kiswahili, just to keep us in time. So we breathe out through the mouth, and then relax and breathe in through the nose, using our full lung capacity. And we breathe out, pulling the stomach in, relax, stomach, breathe in through the nose. In Bili, which is 2, and we breathe out, hold it, relax, stomach, and breathe in through the nose. Tatu, and breathe out for final time, and relax, stomach, and breathe in. In there. Asante. And so now we go on to the rest of the ritual. So we're invocating, or we're bringing out from within us the powers, but we're going to change the energy or the vibration, and to do that in order to thank the powers, to ask that we have a closer connection with them and that they assist us in manifesting our objectives. And as we're doing this, we'll use the triangle chime to create the energy, create the vibration, symbolizing the one vibration that we all emanate from, the all. We're all aspects of that all in physical form. And as we're doing so, we're sharing our energy, and that's the libation, that's the energy offering. And as we let the vibration go around us, through us, and over us, it opens up our consciousness, opens up our third eye, and therefore we have connection to our higher selves and the all, which is our higher self, and thereby connection to wherever we are in the world with each other. We have a conscious connection with each other. So, yes, I'm going to ring the chime 7 times. 7 is the spiritual number for wisdom, seeking, and truth and intuition. Well, most desperately needed. So, I'll begin, and I'll count in Kiss for Healing. Moja. And keep your eyes closed or open. Breathe deeply. Mbili. Tatu. Ine. Tano. Sita. Saba. Now you can open your eyes and we'll just follow what's on screen. We're coming to the call and response part of the ritual. So as I say 1, then we all say it together. Sisi ni kitu kimoja, very powerful affirmations that these powers that we're calling from within us, that are us, that we are one and we are the same thing. So I'll begin. Ninaomba ya muomba awote. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Ninaomba ya nebacha. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Beautiful. Now going to one of the Lawars. Ninaomba from Budon tradition. Ninaomba kanuni na nguvu ya mamiwata. Sisi ni kitu
kimoja.
Now onto the netters, the forces of nature that underpin all things, that are inside of us and outside in all existence. Ninaomba kanuni na nguvu ya shu. Sisi ni
kitu kimoja.
Ninaomba kanuni na nguvu ya tefnut. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Ninaomba kanuni na nguvu ya nut.
Sisi ni
kitu kimoja. Now we go on to the other netters of the Paut Neteru, the Kemetic tree of life, the spiritual science to improve the human being, to bring us into balance, and by bringing us into balance, bring the whole of existence into balance. Ninaomba kanuni na nguvu ya Geb.
Sisi ni
kitu kimoja. Ninaomba kanuni na nguvu ya Auset. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Ninaomba kanuni na nguvu ya Sebek. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Ninaomba kanuni na nguvu ya Heteru. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Ninaomba kanuni na nguvu ya Haru. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Ninaomba kanuni na nguvu ya Herakuti. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Ninaomba kanuni na nguvu ya Maat. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Ninaomba kanuni na nguvu ya Saka. Sisini Kimoja. Ninamba Kanunina Nguvu ya Tahuti.
Sisini
Kimoja. Ninamba Kanunina Nguvu ya Ausa. Sisini Kimoja. And then to the highest vibration. Ninamba Kanunina Nguvu ya Amen.
Sisini
Kimoja. And now we've given thanks to the first ancestor, to the All, the Creator. Now we can call upon those ancestors in our direct bloodline. And I'll begin. Nina Amba Jume Kelly, my mother. Sisini Kitu
Umoja.
Please, Jamal, if you have any in your direct bloodline ancestors you wish to call, please do.
Ninyambo, Grandfather James, Grandmother Mirel, Sisini Kitu
Umoja.
Nina Omba, Mother Iselin Rattigan, Grandfather Sylvester Rattigan, Grandmother Louise Hines.
Sisini Kitu Umoja.
Niniamba Mama Agatha Mendley. Sisini Kitu Kimoja.
Ninyambo, Grandfather Waldy and Grandmother Daisy.
Sisini Kitu Umoja.
Nina Omba, Grandfather Alpheus and Grandmother Gwendolyn.
Sisini
Kitu Kimoja.
Okay, that's beautiful. It's most important we call upon ours direct and those in our direct bloodline because they are us and we are them. Does anybody else wish to call upon the direct bloodline?
Ninyamba, Mother Mirel and Auntie Mary. Sisini
Kitu Kimoja. Niamba Father Beris Castro. Sisini Kitu Kimoja.
Umoja. Nina Omba, Great Grandfather John Rattigan, Great Grandmother Ruth James.
Sisini
Kimoja.
And Zirisana, beautiful. Anybody else? No? Okay, so now we can go on to those ancestors who are not in our direct bloodline, but we should honor and respect because they gave their time, their effort, their sweat, their blood, and their very lives for the liberation of our families, our communities, our race. I'll begin. Ninaomba Mzee means elder. Ninaomba Mzee, the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey.
Sisini
Kitu Kimoja.
Ninyamba, Queen Mother Moore, and our beloved warrior, Harriet Tubman.
Sisini
Kitu Kimoja.
Ninaomba Sheikh Amadou Bamba and Helen Saturi Jatta.
Sisini
Kitu Kimoja.
Ninyamba, Patrice Tamumba, and Amika Cabral. Sisini
Kitu Umoja.
Ninaomba Steve Bantu Biko and Amika Cabral. Umoja.
Niniamba Queen Nanny of the Maroons. Sisini
Kitu
Umoja. Ninyamba, Sam Sharp.
Sisini Kitu Umoja.
Niniamba Ya Asantewa.
Sisini Kitu
Sisini
Umoja.
Umoja.
Yeah, okay. Nina Omba was Amy Ashwood Garvey, na Amy Jacks Garvey.
Sisini Kitu
Kitu
Umoja.
Umoja.
Nyamba Queen Nyabingi. Sisini
Kitu Umoja.
Umoja.
Ninyamba Dessalines and Bookman Doty.
Sisini
Sisini
Kitu Umoja.
Umoja.
Okay, Nina Omba Baba Marcus Garvey Jr. Sisini Kitu Umoja.
Nyamba Paul Bogle.
Sisini Kitu Umoja. Nina Omba Ndugu Dagi na Dagajan. Sisini Kitu Umoja.
Umoja. Sisini
Kitu Umoja.
Yeah,
Can
Sisini Kitu Umoja. Someone.
Can you mute the phone?
Okay, asante sana.
Nyamba Thomas Sankara.
Sisini Kitu Umoja.
Kitu Umoja.
Ninaomba Mzee Nana Bonsu na Baba Tegel na Baba Berenge. Sisini Kitu Umoja.
Nyamba Steve Biko.
Sisini Kitu Umoja. Anyone else? Okay. Ninaomba Mzee Buzumazulu Credo Umtwa na Sobon Fusome na Max Bouvier. Sisini Kitu Umoja. And now we can go on to those ancestors who we don't always know their names, but they left us a tremendous legacy and we should never forget. First of all, those of the Mangamazi. Ninaomba Mababuya Mangamazi. Sisini Kitu Umoja. Ninaomba Mababuya Asian Revolution.
Sisini Kitu Umoja.
Ninaomba Mababuya Taifa la Mosai, the people of the Mosai Nation. Sisini Kitu Umoja. Ninaomba Mababuya Gula Vita, those who fought in the Gula Wars. Sisini Kitu Umoja. Was there somebody who wanted to call a group of ancestors?
Ninyambo, the Kandake Queens.
Sisini
Kitu
Umoja. Anyone else wants to call anybody? Please do. We feel their names come to mind, their spirits wish to be called. Okay, I'll continue. Ninaomba Mababuya Watu ya Kori. That's our people in Australia, the name they call themselves. Sisini Kitu Umoja. Ninaomba Mababuya Watu ya West Papua. Sisini Kitu Umoja.
Remember the pharaohs or the kings from the ancient dynasties and queens. Sisini Kitu
Umoja. Okay. Ninaomba Mababuya APLA, na SWAPO, na Freedom and Land Party, na Black Panthers. Sisini Kitu Umoja. And the first peoples, the first civilizers. Ninaomba Mababuya Watu ya San, na Twa, na Hutu. Sisini Kitu Umoja. Ninawamba wanaishi ambao watatetea sisi. Na wale mababu ambao bado hawajazaliwa.
Sisi ni kitu kimoja.
Umoja.
And then we end on the affirmations and words of power to hear in Kiswahili and in the Kemetic terms. So just follow me if you're not familiar. This has just come to me recently. That should change this and add this to our ritual. So, nguvu zote.
Nguvu zote.
Kwa watu wetu.
Kwa watu
wetu.
Mapenzi ya wote.
Mapenzi ya
wote.
Ni mapenzi yetu.
Ni mapenzi yetu.
Hakuna mwanzo.
Hakuna
mwanzo.
Na hakuna mwisho.
Na hakuna
mwisho.
Anuk amen.
Anuk
amen.
All parts are people. The will of the all is our will. There is no beginning and there is no end. I am. Amen. Asanteni sana, Jama.
Yeah, asante sana and do good morning for that.
You're welcome. I'll be back
now
at the end.
We will get into the topic for today, which is the way forward. And I'd like to start off by asking Sister Kandake to make her presentation.
Okay, so Ujai, greetings. My name is Kandake Makonnen. I am a holistic healer. I am an initiate within traditions. I have been trodding, as we say, the traditional way through Rastafari for many years, and find myself at this point here now, where we all are at the top of 2021, looking forward to where we are going to go. But to look forward, we say you have to Sankofa, you have to look back. So, I really want to acknowledge our brother Imani, who gave us the changing of the vibrations. And I want to start with acknowledging as well the ancestors. And I want to start really my presentation with the stories out of the temples of Kemet, of ancient Egypt, because when we look back, we have to look back to who we are and where our story starts to why we're here today. And in the temples, they tell of the gods, the deities, and there is the deities Wusa and Set, which were created as the part of the first two couples by the great god Ta. And after all things had been created by the first Trinity, Wusa, Imen, and finally Ta, seeing that everything was there for life, created the first two couple, Wusa and Aishat, and Set and Nepsis. Wusa has become known as our ancestral father, and Isis or Aishat, who they called Isis. So Wusa is who they call Osiris, and Aishat is who they call Isis. Now, Set, his brother, is who becomes Setan in this time. And Set decides that he wants to be the one to rule everything. He wants to rule all creation without his brother Wusa, and sets about devising a way to kill him. Because when the two couples were created, they were given a chance to live out their existence. Wusa chose a cyclical cycle, the cycle that we know here in humanity, the cycle of nature, that it goes round, you born, you die, you go down, and you're reborn again. This was the choice that Wusa made to live out his existence. Set decided to live out his existence through eternal life, meaning both were eternal life, but he would never die. His existence would be continual without ever dying. So the two gods had their existence, but they lived it out in a different way. And so Set decided he wanted to get rid of his brother before he could live out his existence as he had chosen. And during the process, there is what we call the holy drama, where Set seeks to get rid of his brother, which he does by putting him in a coffin and eventually killing him and separating his body into 14 pieces and scattering them across the earth. Now, during that story, Wusa's wife, Aisha, known as Isis, has to go on a journey to first of all find her husband's body before it's dismembered by Set, and then going to seek help from the rest of the Neter, the principles of creation, to bring back her husband, for she is the goddess who has the power of magic to bring back. She is the goddess of medicine and healing. And she, along with other goddesses, come back to bring back her husband, Wusa. And she has the first immaculate conception and brings forth Heru, who people know as Horus. And her image is used throughout time as the mother and child, which comes as the Mary and Jesus. Now, this sets up the Nile Valley civilization and the backdrop to the spiritual way or living or livity of the Nile Valley civilization. They are a civilization that understands that there are many principles in nature, which people have come to know as gods, but they understood that there were higher intelligences that ruled. And so the Nile Valley civilization existed for thousands of years. Part of the Nile Valley civilization was the understanding which follows the Wuserian cycle of life and death. And so part of life, when you left this human form, there was a transition into the non-physical realm, which was governed by Wusa and that spiritual aspect, and everything that you did in this life would be weighed up in that life, but your existence still continued. Similar to what they would say now as matter cannot be destroyed, it just simply comes in another form. And so this was the understanding within ancient Kemetic traditions. The ancients understand that everything runs in cycles. And so there came a time within that cycle where another civilization would have to rule. But before that, there was a king, a pharaoh called Akhenaten, who brought together this idea of monotheism. Monotheism. Now, I want to make a point there, because Akhenaten was talking about one God. So where they were talking about many gods, he was talking about one God, but he still had the idea of a greater intelligence. And when the Europeans came in, and when the other civilizations or the other peoples came in first, with the Persian, Cambyses is the first one to conquer Egypt or Kemet in 525 BC, and then Alexander the Greek in 332 BC, Kemet comes under European rule. But it's important to understand the part of the history that we're not told. Before this, there is a full takeover. The pharaohs have given different aspects, specifically the priests and others, the mandate to take the knowledge, because Kemet was just not a place. It had to do with the knowledge that they were getting, to take the knowledge and to go across the Sudan, across the Sahara Desert, into West Africa. And here we had migrations of people leaving Kemet, like the Dogons, like the Yoruba can trace back, like people, the Baifal in Senegal can trace back, like people in Ghana can trace back their origins to the Nile Valley civilization, which spans countries such as Uganda, Rwanda, Ethiopia. These are some of the countries that, so Kenya, Sudan, Tanzania. This is the line where that whole civilization was. And so there were waves going out. But as we move through in European history, because that's the history that we were given, we move through where the Romans, the Greeks, and then Romans take over Kemet. Now, once the Romans take over, they too, just like the Greeks, had the pantheon, the many gods, until the time where Christianity gets taken into the Roman system, and you get a consolidation of power with the Romans. At this time, Kemet is what you call now a colony of Rome. And this is where Romans first institute the system of being classified according to your ethnic background. That becomes important where the Romans put that in. Now, as we move forward 400-500 years, there is a fall of the Roman Empire, and many different tribes and so forth take over Rome and take over that whole system. And Europe falls into what we know as the Dark Ages. Europe falls into the Dark Ages, where high science, knowledge, because you have to remember before that you had who we call, the Europeans call, or who are known as the fathers of civilization, Thales, Socrates. These were the great philosophers, mathematicians, astrologers, Hippocrates, who becomes the father of modern medicine. All of these great thinkers were the ones that had, if not visited Kemet personally, had direct teaching from persons who had. So that was the Oxford of the day. Now, once Rome falls and that knowledge then gets disseminated amongst the tribe, Europe goes into the Dark Ages. And the Dark Ages is marked by death, destruction. At the same time, you still have the church imposing Christianity, and also in such a way by force. Now, there is also something known as the Little Ice Age, which takes place in Europe. And that takes place AD 1300, and it lasts till about 1850. Now, it is during that time that the Europeans are no longer able to, in parts of Europe where they were doing agriculture and so forth, that was not happening so much. They were literally fighting to survive. And it is after those times, or during those times, we had like the Black Plague, death, destructions, and you had the Roman Church doing the witch hunt. So Europe at the time was plunged into darkness, but also you had things like the Black Plague before you had the times where they were able to start crossing the Atlantic to go into other areas. Now, I say that to say this. These are the European histories that we have learned up until now. But what was the state of Africa? Africa at the time had kingdoms who were flourishing. 200 BCE to 1940. Not only did so, I was talking about Kemet, which is one part of Africa, but you had the kingdom of Ife flourishing, the Ghanaian Empire. You had the Mosai kingdoms, the Mali kingdom, the Wolof Empire, the Bornu Empire, the kingdom of Dagbon, all and many more, Songhai. All of these kingdoms were flourishing at exactly the same time when Europe was being plunged into darkness, because we know of Kemet because Kemet was the shining light, but we had the rest of Africa that was still flourishing. Now, by the time we get to the age of discovery, where the Portuguese begin to go into Africa, they begin to see the kingdoms that are in Africa. And then they begin the whole, what we know as the transatlantic slavery begins after they were Africans who were coming out of a totally different paradigm from Europe, were now being taken to Europe to work on their plantations because Europe now needed to build their economy. Now, one of the things that we said in terms of the great thinkers in Europe in Greek times, Hippocrates, we mentioned Hippocrates being the father of medicine, and Hippocrates actually in Europe, and many people wouldn't know that there was a field of medicine, or the healing system was something called the humoral medicine. And the humoral medicine looked at 4 humors. So there was like the blood, the yellow bile, the black bile, and phlegm. And what these were the different fluids that existed within the human body, and which was related to winter, air, water, the earth, and fire. These were again ancient principles that were known. And so this system of medicine called the humoral system lasted right up until a few hundred years ago, where you began to get now what's come as the biomedical model, the germ theory. Now, along with medicine and this germ theory. So when you had the Black Death, you had Louis Pasteur and you had Linnaeus. Well, Linnaeus gave you nomenclature. I'm going to come to Linnaeus in a moment. What they were able to see was that contagions, these are things that come from outside of the body, can infect the body, and that's what makes you sick. There was a time in Europe where you had smallpox, and they realized that something outside of the body was making the person sick. And so Edward Jenner is usually the person who is credited with using vaccination to help people get rid of smallpox, at least to preserve your life. But variolae, which was used before Edward Jenner in ancient in Africa, in India, and in China, where it was documented, where they would take a part of the scab of someone who had smallpox, grind it, blow it up their nose, and the person would then get this person who was healthy before would get slight symptoms, and then they would be okay, they wouldn't die. So the idea of reintroducing a pathogen into the body was known thousands of years. What Jenner did was popularize it, and then they were able to make a product which really became like your first vaccine. Now, this comes at a time, so remember we talk about Pasteur, Louis Pasteur talks about the germ theory, which is what we have now. So this idea of some external pathogen coming into the body becomes encapsulated within the biomedical model under which we now function under. And out of that biomedical model grew industries like the pharmaceutical industry, which was based in natural herbal medicine. So the first mass-produced pharmaceutical product was aspirin, which came from Salix alba, the white willow tree, which herbalists had been using for centuries to heal people with inflammation and so forth, and they found a way to mass produce this natural product. And so the herbs that were being used naturally began to be synthesized, and a whole industry called the pharmaceutical industry sprung up. As an offshoot, under that same medical paradigm came the vaccination side of the medical industry. Now, I just want to just kind of rebalance this now with a holistic perspective, because in holistic medicine or holistic healing, we know that the human being is an intelligence, it's a living organism. So if we ask you, what is the human being made from? And I always ask you, what are you made from? And some people might say, well, the bones, the you know, cells, organs, but what are they made from? And when you break the human being down, the physical body, it's made from the elements of the earth, what they now call carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, potassium, magnesium. Your physical being comes from the earth, comes from all the elements that makes everything around in creation. And so your body has been designed in a way that when you need for a human being to grow, it must feed from that which it came from. You must feed from the earth because you're a living organism. And so you have to feed from that which you came from. You're a living organism who does not consciously regulate what's going on in the body. The body is a living intelligence. So you don't say to your heart, keep beating, and in the morning when I get up, I'll take over, you know, when you're going to bed. No, your heart is beating, something beyond your conscious ability. You're breathing beyond your conscious ability. But the human being has, and in modern medicine, they tell you 11 systems. And one of the system, your immune system, was designed, and let's remember the human being is designed. So your urinary system helps the urine to leave your body. Your digestive system is made so that the food can go in, you take the nutrients out of the food, and then you get rid of the waste that you don't need. The immune system is like your police, your surveillance. It goes around the body to make sure that there's nothing in the body that it needs to, you know, get rid of. So your body has an inbuilt mechanism to take care of things that come from outside of the body. And ancient people had the knowledge to know that when something does enter, there are ways by using herbs or using variolae to heal the body. So human beings have been on the planet for hundreds of thousands of years and had developed ways to survive. Now, here's the thing. Variolae was used for hundreds of thousands of years before this European paradigm comes into being. And with this European paradigm comes other areas of science. And science is really the study of nature. And why do I say science? If I'm going to say what is science, the study of nature. And I know you can say to observe and to experiment and to replicate and all the other terms that's used. But when the human being steps onto this planet, any human being, when we came here, everything was here first. Viruses and bacteria were already living. We came onto the planet to find everything here. Human beings simply use what is here and maybe put things together and change, but we didn't make anything. We came and found all these intelligences here. So the human being has to learn to fit within his environment. But by the time the Europeans, remember, they were modern Europeans, because you had the fall of Greece and Rome, which were learning from the ancient, which knew of the high sciences. Because remember, when we're talking about Kemet, we're talking about governments, we're talking about agriculture, we're talking about husbandry, we're talking about mathematics, we're talking about astrology. So that was all set and well known. But when Rome falls, that falls. Not that there aren't places where knowledge is kept, but within Europe, there's this darkness. So by the time Europe comes back out of darkness and starts going into Africa and to other places, this is like a renaissance. This is where knowledge is now, the light is now being shined on European sciences. And so you get an explosion. In the last 400-500 years, you've had an explosion, not of science in human history, but in European and post-Roman, post-Greco history. Now, we had the things like Darwinism, and I'm going to just come up to where I'm coming into modern times. Now, Darwin looked at, natural selection, and Linnaeus, who is the one who gives you a binomial nomenclature. So he is the one who gives you, Homo sapiens, for example. So the classification of all things. This is only done in the last few hundred years. Homo sapiens means simply a kind of ape, because according to Darwin's theory, we came from a line of apes, and we're just a type of ape, which is a sapien. But we need to remember that when this last age of classifying things comes about, it comes about in the last 400-500 years. What coincides with that? It coincides with Europeans being able to, for the first time, see things like apes, for the first time, see things like baboons. Prior to that, these set of Europeans that are in what we would call France, Spain, and maybe not so much of Spain, but certainly France, England, because a lot of these people came from Germany. They had not, up until this time, come into contact with apes. If you look in even ancient Rome or Greek, human beings were never compared to what you would call an ape or a monkey, but they were known in the old world. It is only in the new times, with this new nomenclature, where they begin to discover Earth, that these terminologies begin to be known. And this is under a European paradigm. Why does that become important? Because prior to that, human beings never equated themselves to animals in terms of monkeys or apes. Never in the history of humans. Okay. So now we've got a classification of human beings being a certain type of ape. You also have the rise of pharmaceutical companies. So this new wave of science, and I'm speaking now within the medicine side, and vaccinations. And so at the time now, you're getting great wealth coming in through, it becomes an industry. I think I just want to make a point. I'm trying to tie everything in, and then I'm going to just finish off. Now, I just want to make a point about the industry, because when we talk about moving forward, it's going to be important that we understand the thinking behind those who are, or the thinking of those who are in power, so that we can see what do we want for our future, what is our vision. Let's just want to get, okay, so we have within European civilization, you had what was called the first industrial revolution. That's water, steam, and power, because being able now to get all the riches from slavery and so forth, you know, Europe was able to propel itself into wealth. Then you had the second, you could call it industrial revolution, where you have electrical power, you know, mass production. Now you have to remember, at the same time, you still had the medicine side happening. So it's important to understand it's an explosion in all areas of politics, economics, in all areas of Europe. There's this explosion, and we know that in the last 400-500 years, it coincides with the time of slavery. Now, the third industrial revolution is electronics and information technology. You will hear that when they're now those in power who are talking about the future, they talk about the fourth industrial revolution. What's the fourth industrial revolution? How does that relate to humans? And when I was talking about humans, and what does that have to do with the vaccinations? And what does that have to do with what happened over the last year? Those that are in position of power do not have a 5-year agenda or a 10-year agenda. Their agendas are hundreds of years, 20, 30, 40, well in advance. It was Kissinger in the 60s who brought about this policy of depopulation. That was a good 40, 50 years ago. And we have heard it over time. So this is not me saying this. We're talking about those who are in power have repeatedly talking about the population of the earth is too much and it needs to be reduced. The fourth industrial revolution that they're talking about is AI, artificial intelligence. But the artificial intelligence, they tell you, and I think it's important that whoever's listening, look up the fourth industrial revolution, because that is the one that is about to come. Look up the Internet of Things, because that is the one that is about to come. When Boris Johnson went to the UN last year, they talk about him rambling on. And he mentions the Internet of Things. What is the Internet of Things? Have any of you heard of the Internet of Things? Put it in your phones now. Put it into your Google apps now and type it. What is the Internet of Things? That is the vision for their future. It's really important because you're on the brink of that. Whether you're aware of it or not, you're on the brink of the industrial revolution, the fourth industrial revolution, which is artificial intelligence. Now, what does the human bit have to do with it? When we go back to the ancient Kemetic temples, Aishat gives birth to Heru, and Heru stands as the hero. Heru is the one who stands for humanity. Heru represents humanity. But what does it mean now to be human? In transhumanism, which was born out of the eugenics movement, the earliest proponent of transhumanism, which actually comes out of neo-Darwinism, because this natural selection had everything to do with eugenics, only selective breeding is what they talked about. And I think his name was Julian Huxley. Look him up. Transhumanism talks about no God, and it specifically looks. If you listen to people like, and I think his name is Elon Musk, the billionaire, he tells you that, and he's said it many times. So again, this isn't anything I am saying. This is what is being said by the most powerful people who have the ability to make the changes. This is being said by them. He says that artificial intelligence is going to be the one that's going to take over. And what transhumanism is human beings and artificial intelligence becoming one, so that some transhumanists say, so that we can be on par with artificial intelligence, or else artificial intelligence is going to look down on the human race and be in control of us. But some transhumanism are saying that so that we can live for 400, 200 years, 300 years, 400 years, maybe forever. They're talking about linking up human beings to the cloud. Now, this is already being done, linking up human beings. So Elon Musk himself has a technology company called Neuralink, and it's all out there. It's nothing hidden. It's just that you may not have seen it yet, or you may not be listening to what they're saying. But he's already started. So they start with people who are paraplegics and putting in chips in the brain to help them maneuver. So in the field of medicine, it's a good thing, right? You're being able to link up and heal, or at least be able to use your limb. The $6 million man. Anybody remember the $6 million man? You know, part human, part artificial. But the other part of the transhumanists is that what they're saying is they will be able to live forever if they are able to link themselves up with the cloud, where you become one with this artificial intelligence. I want to again just shuffle that around, and then I'm going to come out, shuffle that around and look at it naturally. So we go back to holistic health. The human being is already linked up. The human being is already linked up. When you wake in the morning and you go to sleep at night, it's because there's a gland called the pineal gland that regulates light, watches light, is able to interact with the light of the sun, because the planets are all interconnected. We as human beings are receivers. We pick up with the pineal gland, we pick up the light of the sun. At a certain time, when the sun begins to go down, we release melatonin, which tells us it's time to sleep. As the sun makes its traverse, as it begins to come back up in the morning, the pineal gland stops releasing melatonin and releases serotonin, and we wake up. But that's not the only cycle. Remember, I spoke about Worcester and the whole cyclical side of things. That's not the only cycle. Females, we have the reproductive cycle. We have our menstrual cycle. We have many different cycles where hormones rise and fall in our body. So the human being, whether you're conscious of it or not, is already inextricably linked to the universe. You're already linked. This is not what you have to do consciously. It's what is already there. That's why you don't have to tell your heart to beat. There's an inbuilt intelligence. That's why when a baby is born, you don't have to look to tell it to put food. It comes out. It comes out with an intelligence to know that it must eat. It's already inbuilt. What our forefathers did was that they understood that there was a non-physical or spiritual aspect. So, to round this up, how do we move forward? Hold on. The last thing about the vaccinations is that we have seen, and I think many people have made that point clearly, so I don't have to labor it, where vaccine programs have been used to depopulate, which is a global agenda which they put out there. Vaccines have already been used to depopulate. And we as African people going through the Middle Passage know that we have always been on the forefront of this depopulation agenda, one way or the other. If it's not to use us for economics, then when you have no more use, where do you go? What's your purpose? But this goes beyond now just race. You're talking about humanity. I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to pause shortly because there is more, but I just want to pause now. I would like at this point, if I can, just to highlight what we're talking about with transhumanism and how it can be very succinctly just pushed into the social consciousness. If I can, let's see if I can share my screen. And I would just like to let's see, share screen. Something that we've seen on the TV before. Now, I do not know if I can share let's see if I can share this. Share. Okay, so what I was going to show was, and you've probably seen it, so it's not sharing at the moment, but what I'll do is I'll just right, let's just try this again. So while I'm trying to share the screen, and if I don't, it's not a problem. You need to have a look because it's important that you're aware of what those in power have in mind so that you can know what you are going to do to circumvent what others have. And remember, Bob said this, the biggest man or the greatest man you ever see was once a baby, meaning that everybody came on this planet the same way. You have as much intelligence and as much right to be here and live out your existence and live your vision as any other person on the planet. So I'm not, for whatever reason, it's not sharing. No, it's not sharing. So there is a short, it's almost like a little skit that you may have seen it. Do you remember seeing, being seen on the BBC or on different programs? There's this thing of a young girl, mixed race. So there's a black mother and a white father. And the young girl comes in and says, Mom, she's sitting down. I think they've gone out to lunch. And she says to Mom, the mom's phone starts ringing. She goes, pick it up. The mom picks up the phone, the black mother, and she puts her fingers to her face like this, and she says, it's me. And she's like, huh? She has no phone in her hand. And what she shows her, she has a chip inside her. Now, they have a discussion where the mom is kind of like, what? You know, introducing it to the older folks that, this girl has a chip. Anyway, so that's the first one. So she's actually got the chip where the phone is into her, and she tells you all the wonderful things. Oh, I don't have to press a phone anymore. I can just do it straight from within me. How wonderful this is. Okay. The second one, where you see the mother and father come into the hospital and the girl's in the hospital, and what's going on? And she says, oh, Mom, Dad, look. And she picks up her iPad. And now she has implanted in her brain where she can now look at things that are happening in different continents, and she's saying, "Mom, I can feel the waves, and I feel so powerful. I can feel," and so this can be seen as, it's not advertising anything. It's this little 3-minute thing. The last one, where this young girl is sitting across the table with her black mother and white father, and she says, "Mom, Dad, I'm trans." And they come over and they say, "Oh dear, it's okay. We accept that. Being trans, it's okay. If you don't want to be a girl anymore, you want to be a boy." She's like, "What are you talking about? I'm not transsexual. I want to be transhuman." I'm like, "What?" And she says, "I want to hook my brain up to the cloud. That way I become one with the artificial intelligence." Now, and they go out having that conversation. Now, okay, I mean, in the realms of normal, what does that mean? It's a nice little, okay. We've seen already in societies where the chick is part of everyday life now. But the transhumanists not only are talking about persons being integrated, they're also talking about economy, because it's always been about economy. And so I shared on the last time I was, and I'm going to share it again. So we say follow the money. If you see big players making investments, it's because there's something coming down the road. So we said on March 26th, and again, I want you to look this up, at the peak of the corona pandemic, Microsoft granted a patent by the World Intellectual Property Organization, WIPO, patent number 060606. And it was for human body activity associated with a task provided to a use. It may be used in a mining process of cryptocurrency system. This body activity includes radiation emitted from the human body, brain activities, brain fluid flow, blood flow, organ activity, body movement such as eye movement, facial movement, muscle movement, and as well as other activities. Now, why would someone, so here for me now are the questions. Why would someone as wealthy as the Gates Foundation, which are included in the vaccination programs, and which we know which vaccination programs have been used extensively in Africa to depopulate? We know that. It hasn't been disputed. In fact, they've had to make payouts to the Nigerians. They're currently in a lawsuit against India for making infertile many females, and so on and so forth. So we know that the vaccination, companies have been involved in that, and they've made payouts on that. Now, why would someone want to invest in a patent that is related to human body activity? Okay, so the last thing I want to say is look up the Internet of Things. The Internet of Things is what's coming with the companies in terms of whether it's your settee, whether it's your bed, whether it's your dresser. Sensors are going to be placed. It's already on the agenda. It's going to be placed inside all things that are in your home. The final part of that is what you've heard people saying over and over again about this human being somehow wanting to be connected. So homework, I would say, don't take anything that I say. This is simply just research that I have done, and they don't hide it. They're not hiding it. Look up transhumanists. They've got a very elaborate, actually, like it's 1 or 2 hour video on exactly what they're about. They're not hiding. They don't have to anymore. So look that up. Look up the Internet of Things. Like we said, Boris Johnson made a point of saying, look, how far is this thing going to go, when he was talking about the UN. So they do talk about it very openly, and they tell you it's where the world is going. So as a people, what for us does it mean to be human? And this will not be a black and white thing anymore, because they've reached the stage, it's not about color anymore. It's about humanity. Where do we stand as humanity? What we found during last year was that African states, at least some of them, were willing not to take the vaccine. So we had Madagascar developing its own natural remedy to the vaccination, and about 30 odd African countries bought into that. We've seen now where the gates have opened, and places like Ghana and other countries are saying, if you want to return, you can. There are avenues to do that. So I'm going to finish off here by saying, as a people, it is time we return one way or another back to our motherland, where at the time when Europe was in dissension, Africa was still in its glory stage, and we still have the remnants. Despite colonialization, we still have the remnants of our civilization, and we now have knowledge being in Europe. And there is one person that I want to say now whose vision, if no one else, look him up, because even if you didn't like him, even those who didn't like him finally understood what he was saying. And this was the Right Honorable Marcus Garvey. Whether you were an African state leader, whether you were from the Caribbean, at the time of the greatest depression, Marcus Garvey was able to galvanize the people of Africa, of African descent, and rise up the Black Star Liner when America was going down in the Great Depression. If he can do that, we have the power still to do what we need to do as human beings. As Bob said, the greatest one you ever did see was once a baby. So take back your power and understand that this is about humanity. That's my contribution so far.
Okay, Asante Sana, Sister Kandake, Asante Sana for that. And I'm sure that's given people a lot of food for thought. So please think about that and get your questions and comments ready. At this moment, I will ask Elder Pepukayi to come in and also to make his contribution. You're muted. Just unmute yourself.
After listening to our beloved Sister Kandake, I don't really want to come on. Because what Sister Kandake shared with us, and she take the time to give us that background to lead to where we are, has been magnificent. Because she had to squash a lot of stuff together. Otherwise, she could be here a week or more just talking about these issues that she has raised. In fact, a lot of people have called me and said, Brother Pepukayi, Happy New Year. And the year that we've just come out of has been so challenging. I really can't understand what people are talking about a Happy New Year. As Sister Kandake said, Europeans do not think about tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, but century in advance, those in power and leading. And when we look at what we're facing, a lot of us are in denial because the reality is so serious that we just can't grapple with it. We just can't believe it. Because, as Sister Kandake said, we as human, the way in which we've been put together is so fascinating. As she said, we don't tell our heart to beat. Just carry on all the different parts or it link. An incredible construction which is human. And who would want to interfere with that is a question. So I said that when dark clouds gather, it's normally a sign for rain. But this rain is not water that's gonna that's gonna water a parched earth. It's acid rain that will not end the drought, but is pregnant with destruction. And from where I stand, and I'm glad I have company in my great sister in front of me, Sister Kandake, what we're seeing is not looking to be a happy new year at all. All of us are wishing for a happy new year. But the entire world faces a crisis, which is unprecedented, over a supposed virus that has gone global. If we listen to all the governments by a tiny few, what they're saying is vaccine, which are made very different from how vaccine are normally made. It hasn't gone through the trials that vaccine normally go through, like to test it on animals. No. In fact, it hasn't been normally approved. It's been emergency approved. And basically the argument is that people are dying in the thousands daily and rising. And we have to do something now. And the only thing we need to do, give everybody the vaccine. As Sister Kandake mentioned, nobody is talking about natural remedy. Because we know in Madagascar, the people that come up with natural remedy that prove to arrest this virus, whatever it is. And in fact, there was only a small number of people at that time who was affected and very few deaths. Yet they were pushed aside and vaccine become the order of the day. Now, where are we heading? Because this COVID-19 is just a lead instrument in this whole business. Because Sister Kandake mentioned transhumanism, and that's been connected to the cloud somewhere. What will that be? People are getting very excited over cryptocurrency because money helps to transfer virus, so get rid of it. In fact, some shops you go in now say they don't take cash. So we've been induced and pulled along in this brave new world. And there's nothing brave about it. In fact, from what Sister Kandake has raised, it is a very frightening word indeed. And we've got to ask ourselves the question, where do we stand in all of this? Because I've spoken to a number of people and they said, I'm not going to take any vaccine. And we've been assured that it won't be made mandatory. But let's look at the projection as it's going. What if the government does not say it's mandatory and everybody must have it? But what if the airlines, transport, businesses, shops, premises, your workplace, say if you don't have the vaccine, you can't come and you can't do this? What would we do? Even if I was to fill up this house of tin food, how long would that last? And I would have to stay inside the house because there'll come a time when there's a law that I can't step out at the front door. And then I hear a lot of people talk about common law. And I'm no lawyer, but can common law save us? Because from what little I know, and we need our people in the legal profession to educate us on this, is that an emergency powers act have been passed in the British Parliament, just where we live, which overrides other laws because it's a state of emergency. And they're supposed to review it every 6 months. And I just had a glance at a news report that the main opposition party, Labour Party, is saying to Boris, bring in nationwide lockdown within 24 hours. So you don't have a government who's pushing one way and an opposition pulling the other way in this so-called democracy. Both government and opposition are singing from the same hymn sheet. In fact, at some time, the opposition seems to be pushing harder than the government. I'm saying all that to say that we've buried our heads in the sand and our backside has been exposed and we're getting some heavy licks. In July of last year, along with other elders who were within the African Parliament, decide that we must do all that we can to revive the African People's Parliament. And if we can't, we put in a new one in its place. And while that was happening, come March, we already heard that this coronavirus is let loose on all of us and was wreaking havoc around the world. And so while in July, we was focusing and try to rekindle the African People's Parliament. I then called a meeting of a number of community heads and said, look, we need to sit down and focus on this as an emergency. And a number of people did turn up. But to be quite honest, the follow-up has been very dismal because we're not treating this with the kind of urgency that we should. And I know that what Sister Kandake has revealed and what little I know, we're not wrong. Because one thing she said, and it's correct, it's not what she think or what she believe, it's what is out there. Now, let's look at a few facts. And I said a few. Bill Gates has transformed himself from a ruthless techno monopoly giant to the world-leading philanthropist by setting up the Bill Gates and Melinda Foundation. And that foundation has got global reach, very powerful, very influential, because that organization alone is a big donor to the World Health Organization and to the CDC. Now, when we hear about the World Health Organization, we think this is a body where all the governments of the world have an input and decide how the health of the world is best attended to. Not so. A small clique of people decide the state of the health of the world. And they've done the same thing. Another Obama, this guy Trudeau, who's now the big front man of the World Health Organization. But he ain't got the power. Where does he take his orders from? Because we did get very excited when Obama became president of America. In fact, my Angela cried tears of happiness. A savior has come. And how foolish we were. Because we've got to ask ourselves, who's Obama? Obama's a bright man, but first and foremost, a Democrat who happens to be black. Not the other way around. And he served a purpose of pulling America out of the doldrum that Bush put it into, to give some kind of respectability in the 2 terms that he served. Now, go back to Bill Gates. In the Wall Street Journal, he made it quite clear that he put in $10 billion into vaccine. And the returns was $200 billion. A 20-to-1 return on his investment. And that's the only thing. There's money coming from all around, as Sister Kandake reminds us. Follow the money. But it's not just the money. It's this whole business of a world where humans have transformed into something very different. We've come through conquest. We've come through enslavement. We've come through colonialism. And we've survived all of that and still surviving colonialism, which has made a change as neocolonialism. But the way I'm looking at it, there's no way we're gonna survive transhumanism, because where it will take us if we don't organize ourselves and shut it down, it's unthinkable, unspeakable. Because don't forget, we're not slaves. We were captured and made enslaved. But somebody sat down and worked that out. Because slavery as we know it was nothing new. But what happened to us Africans was very different. Because other people have been through slavery for a much shorter space of time. They went in as who they are, and they came out as who they supposed to be. Our enslavement has lasted over 400 years and has left us quite in a terrible mess, because we don't even know who we are to this day. So I'm saying all of that to say black bodies have always come under serious attack, because we as Africans have not been able to get our minds right and to organize ourselves to determine our own destiny. Because Sister Kandake made a point that African governments, doors are open and the content for us to return. I think we need to look at that more carefully, because there's only one country that I know of right now is Tanzania. Because our president of Tanzania, he did not go in for this lockdown, he did not go in for the vaccine, he did not go in for this testing. And if we look at what's happening in South Africa, having more or less the same population size of 50-odd million, people are dropping like flies in South Africa. Why? Because the president there is signing up lock, stock, and barrel to what the World Bank, the WHO, the UN, the transhuman agenda. Because we must remember who Ramaphosa is. Ramaphosa has always been there with the money. And now he's president. Don't forget, when African workers in the mines in South Africa asked for a little bit of a pay rise, they turned the guns and slaughter only of our brothers and sisters who just asked for a little pay rise. And Ramaphosa was part of it. And now he's president. So you can't expect much from him. And there's a video going around purporting to be a speech by the president of Ghana, talking about exposing this scandemic. And we have to be careful not to be fooled. It's not him. Somebody has used his image and voiceover and make it sound like him. We've got to check him out and find out what is his program for the people of Ghana and the people of Africa. Because he's built up a big church, and that's his legacy. Hasn't built a great museum like what they've done in Tanzania. Sorry, in Senegal. this grand museum that we can go and see Africa in all its grandness. No, he built a church to create more fools. That's his legacy. So I'm saying that, in fact, I'll close with a story. Some years back, after living in England for a long time, I went back to visit my family in Jamaica. And I was talking to one of our neighbors, and he said, boy, I would advise you, to go back to England and sell off your thing them you got over there and come back to England and come back to Jamaica. Because even if you have to plant cassava, you better off here than stay in England, and then kill you off over there. That was many years ago. And my grandfather turned to Mass Radley, the neighbor, and said, leave my boy alone. Make him stay in England and better himself. Make your thieving boy them go plant cassava. No, it's 2021. I'm in England. If I decide to leave England tomorrow, I'm not going to get on any plane without I have a test. And one Israeli doctor, she didn't show me any proof. So whether she wanted to lie or not, is what she said. She said they're giving the vaccination through the test. Because she said that thing that poke up your nose, go beyond some thin plate at the back of your nose to go into your brain, and that's where they planting the vaccine. I'm no doctor. I'm no scientist. I'm not at that level to know. And I'm saying we should be very, very careful and very watchful. I'm saying all that to say that if we don't mind sharp, we come to a point where there's nowhere to run to, and you can't run because you've been blockaded. Because Jamaica, that I was born and raised, the government was a landslide that has never happened in Jamaica election before. I've come up with some special laws, and vaccine is on the agenda. It's free in Jamaica. So okay, you may say, well, we can run way up in the hills and soldier won't bother and come free to vaccinate up in the hills. I'm saying that we need to organize ourselves. Late as it is, we can overturn this. Because if we don't, what is in store for us is unthinkable. Because the information that Sister Kandake has given us is just a little scratch on the surface. It goes really deep. And we need to spend time properly, step by step, to expose what is going on so people can see clearly that this is not some wild-eyed, frightened old people talking rubbish. It is serious, and we need to face up to it. So I'll kind of ease up for now, and we have a discussion. Let's have a discussion on these things.
Okay, Asante Sana, Elder Pepukayi, for that. And you brought out very few interesting points. So like I said, now we'll open it more, and quite a few points has come in. But just before we go there, what I'd like to say in terms of an organization such as the PACM, as you know, we started these sessions in about, I think it's March, late March, early April last year. And that was as a direct result of the situation that we saw happening. And over the months, we have been kind of on a roller coaster when we think about it, because first we were told lockdown will be for 6 weeks. So we was even thinking, fine, after 6 weeks, we'll still be on target to put on our African Liberation Day celebrations, which we was planning. And then as time went on, we saw that more lockdown came and they got more draconian. And then we were taught that, well, you know, after the summer, we'll be fine. And we found that we wasn't fine. And when we look closely at what's happening, it's become crystal clear that, as Sister Kandake pointed out, when Microsoft was awarded a patent all that time back, and how a lot of these money men, these investors, were pouring money into these pharmaceuticals company. So we can see it reached a point where they thought that even if the information that was being put out there by responsible, and I use the word responsible medics, you know, both the medical doctors and the homeopathic doctors, who were saying the way to approach any virus is to strengthen your immune system. That is the key. And a number of doctors have actually opened up YouTube channels and have been coming on and have been pointing out things like vitamin D, vitamin C, and all the other natural remedies that we can take, that even if you do contract the virus, your body will be given a chance to fight it off. Now, from the official channels or so-called government channels, nothing of the sort has come forth. Everything has been channeled into this magic cure of when, once the vaccine has been developed, everything will be okay and we'll start getting back to normal. So you can see there's been a concerted effort to sideline anything that doesn't point towards a vaccination. And now we have reached a stage where this country have, at the moment, the Pfizer vaccine, the AstraZeneca vaccine. We know America has the Moderna vaccine as well. And we can see that other countries are in advanced stages of developing their own vaccines. And what is frightening, we were told during the pandemic that once this magic figure, this R rate, goes over 1, things then become very, very serious, and lockdowns and other draconian measures had to be taken. But if we look at places like the African continent, there's nowhere in the African continent that the R rate have even come close to 1. And yet, we are seeing a concerted effort to push the vaccine on those countries in Africa. When we think about it, we are told the only reason vaccination was necessary in places like Europe and North America is because of the extent to which the virus has spread and consequently the death rate. So yes, if we was going down that line, we would say, yes, there's a case for the vaccine in Europe. There's a case for the vaccine in places like North America, because this magic R rate has been well exceeded. But why Africa when the R rate is so low? So few people are dying of the vaccine, and yet there's a determination to bring them on board and get them to vaccinate their population. So the agenda that Sister Kandake highlighted, we can see it is being played out. It is something that has been in the planning for many, many years. And we just have to look at previous incidents or previous occasions in the past, how vaccinations have been used. For example, during the time they were purporting to vaccinate people against polio, somehow those vaccines became contaminated with the AIDS virus. And hence again, when they were proposing to vaccinate people in Kenya recently for tetanus, those vaccines became contaminated with the Depo-Vera, hence sterilizing young girls, women. So we can see it is nothing new. And of course, that famous case of the Tuskegee that went on from the 40s right up until the 70s when people were deliberately vaccinated. So I've been following certain news channel, and they have been saying, especially in America, one of the hardest things is going to be to convince Black people to take the vaccine because of what they've gone through before. You're damn right it's going to be difficult, but they are going to try and create a climate that if you do not take this vaccine, you'll be an outcast, and then, as Pepukayi said, state of emergencies has been passed, whereby if you do not take vaccine, it won't be too long before you'll be hoarded into certain institution and locked away. And we can see it's a serious road that we are going down. So the question is now, the way forward, because the vaccines are here, they're being rolled out. It's like we're just waiting for the day that we are called, a letter or by text message or by what is your turn. What is going to be the move? Now, it has been shown that we cannot rely on certain governments, even in Africa, that do not need to administer these vaccines to their population because it is not justified based on the science. We keep hearing about follow the science. If we follow that science, many of countries in Africa and the Caribbean should not be vaccinating their population because the science does not warrant it. And yet we know what is going on. The case is being pushed by all these international bodies that you must take the vaccine. Now, the one that really frightens me more than most is the AstraZeneca, because basically the whole thing is this would be given out free. That's the idea. With the Pfizer, you have to keep it at -70 at least for it to be effective. Now, with AstraZeneca, they said even room temperature is okay. So we can see it's a attempt to flood, to mass vaccinate. The science has gone out the window. It is crystal clear what is going on here. Kissinger's name was brought up, population control. All this is now playing out. So that's the question for 2021. What is the way forward? How can we, as Black people, because we know we are the #1 targets for any population control, we are the #1 targets for all the devious deeds that's been put forward. So as a people, and this is a question going out to everybody, as a people, what do you think the most effective means we can take to preserve our very existence? So now I'd just like to open up the floor. Sister Kandake, feel free if you'd like to come back, or Elder Pepukayi. And while you're doing that, I'll be looking for points and comments that has been sent in and post them up so we can also discuss around those. Yes, Sister Kandake, would you like to come back? You're muted. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I was just on mute. Yeah, thanks. In everything that I do, I was asked for guidance from, and as we did, called upon our ancestors in the divine world, because sets goals is either the destruction of humanity, or for those who follow Setan, as we call it, they want to live forever. It's that path where you don't have this normal cycle. Now, one of the things that I closed off saying was that, you know, as human beings, what is it that we are going to do? And Marcus Garvey said it, Bob said it, you know, some of the great ones amongst us said it. Man will never know themselves till them back against the wall. Because for people to be proactive and do things ahead of time, they take the easy option out. They just bide their time and keep going because they don't have to. When your back is against the wall, you have no choice. Now, we now have to look at what we are willing to do. And you will hear every time I speak, I refer back to the Rasta man, because I think the Rasta man is a very good example. At a time when all the Rasta man had to do was to cut his locks, and he would have been able to get a job, he would have been able to fit into society, he would have been able to have what everybody else had. Because of what he knew of his past and who he was, he refused. She too. And so we had people that even their own family turned against because of the overriding narrative that was out there about the Rasta man. So we have an example amongst our own people of when the chips came down and they had a choice, they chose to suffer than to accept because of what they believed in. And my people, the reality is, some of that is what you're going to have to do. Meaning what? And I put myself in with anyone. If we are going to get real and honest with ourselves before we look outside and talk about organizing with others, that's the first thing. That's the second thing. First thing, let's look at this. We know, and this is why, and I'm going to pay respect to the traditions. I'm going to pay respect to the teachings of the Kemetic temples. I'm going to pay respect to the organizations like the Earth Center and those indigenous traditions that are teaching us to be honest with ourselves. We know that when we put gas in our car, we know that when we use these smartphones, we know where the components of these were coming from, don't we? I put myself up here too. We know that children in Africa are going down in mines to get the components for these things, don't we? Yet we too sit here and enjoy the benefits of the system, not willing to sacrifice. So we too must take responsibility for what is now happening to humanity, because we sit here complicit. So we must first start with ourselves. What are we willing to give up? Because you see, the sugar that he gives us is so sweet, we don't want to let it go. At what cost? So once we start with ourselves and we get honest with ourselves, then yes, we can start. You know, we give thanks for organizations like yourself. You have been holding this platform, this thinking, this way of being for so long, that people now who didn't know about you can come and know, okay, there's a PACM. They think of Black consciousness, you know, whether it's political or governmental, but at least there's an organization. What about the other organizations that are out there that do need to come together and really sit down and think? And when we say think through this, because I don't doubt, no matter how many hundreds of years, you can look at it as a David and Goliath moment. You can look at it as a Luke Skywalker and the ships when he has to find that part and blow up the ship. But we must now, you see the ego thing where we have, you see that all of them foolishness that have gone on for so long, our backs are against the wall. There is no time for that. His Majesty at the time when it was needed, Haile Selassie was able to bring all the noble people together of his country and say, okay, we have a common enemy. Because you see, those who are in power, those who have the world economy at their fingertips, they don't always get on, you know. No, they have their differences, but they have a common goal. And that is what unites them. This is why I said Marcus Garvey. Whether it's an intellectual, whether it's the Nation of Islam, whether it's Rastafari, whether it's the Pan-African movement, even people like Du Bois who didn't agree with Marcus in the beginning, agreed with his policy, whether it's the Chinese, he understood that a people without a vision must fail. What is our vision? What is our vision? I have told you someone else's vision, and this is another thing Marcus said. Them can't wrong them upon them work, they're doing what they're supposed to do. They're pushing themselves forward. What is our vision for ourselves? What is it? I can tell you about someone else's vision because they made sure they were working on their vision. Everybody came on this planet the same way, as a little baby opening their mouth and looking for milk. Nobody came here more than anybody else. So it means we have the same abilities. What is our vision? What do we want for ourselves? And we need to get clear about that. What do we want? What is our common goal? And I say this, it's not going to be just about Black people anymore. This is about humanity. So as a people, we do need to come together. But this is not just about us. It's not just because we see this is global. So that's what I would say at the moment.
Okay, just looking at any points that come up. Okay, I mean, this one is pointing out there's 189 countries, most of the Caribbean nations, and 38 out of 52 of the African nations, India, South and Central South America, suppose they're saying, have all signed up for the vaccine. But one point I'd like to bring up is the thing about the vaccine. We talk about you talked about the fourth industrial revolution being artificial intelligence. Yeah, and one of the things that kept coming up over and over again about a lot of vaccines being developed is the use of nanotechnology. And this isn't some thing we say, well, it's down the road. This is something that's here, and it's been here a very, very long time. And all the science around nanotechnology and what has been said is something that is possible right now. Now, doctors of the doctors have come out and denied that is the case. But what assurance do we have Because when Africa was being ravaged by the AIDS virus, they came out and denied that any vaccination was responsible. The Tuskegee Institute, when people were dying of syphilis, they denied for years that vaccinations were responsible, you know, and many, many instances for that. So what assurance do we have from any government who is dishing out vaccine that there isn't an intent to cause harm to certain peoples? Do we have any such assurance? And especially Black people, African people need to be on their guard more than most, because where we are concerned, we have proven evidence where this technology has been used to harm us time and time again. So, you know, that's something I like to say and put there to say, as Elder Pepukayi says, he's not a scientist, he's not a medic. Same here. But one of the things human beings are born with, we're all born with, and we like to think that we all have common sense. And when something is out there that's not right, you can say you get a gut feeling that there's something up. Now, the phrase about the Great Reset is abundant right now. What does that really mean? You know, that's something we have to look into. Because I do not think that somebody like, I forgot his name, I think it's something Kennedy, and many, many other people are coming out and are saying there's definitely something sinister around, you know. Nothing definitive that anybody can hold up and say, I found it, it is here. But millions of people are getting the sense that a lot of this doesn't smell right. And I'm saying, as Black people, when we look at the Caribbean and we look at Africa, there's definitely something happening there that isn't right concerning coronavirus. Because when smallpox was ravishing certain part of the world, you target that part of the world with whatever cure you had or whatever treatment you had. You didn't go around the world and said, we're going to vaccinate everybody for smallpox. So why is it the case when it comes to this virus, the one everybody must be vaccinated? Again, like I'm saying, the very science that they told us to follow is blowing up in their face. It doesn't make sense. So I just hope that people at large just use their common sense and to say, well,
can I just say something?
Yeah, come through, no problem. Yeah, come through, Sister Kandake.
Sorry, my brother. No, I didn't realize you hadn't finished.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
No.
It's just a point that you made there. One of the the cases where the vaccine companies went into Africa and they had vaccinated a group of people, and it was young girls, and it was for rubella. It was rubella, if I remember what it was, but it was against some kind of virus. Now, what happened was, again, it caused infertility. They petitioned the vaccine companies, but the issue was, it was simply going to be tested down in Africa, and although they had the disease, it was the vaccination was not going to be sold. It wasn't for the African. Even though Africa had the disease and needed the vaccine, it was not going to be used in Africa. They were tested. Many of them got sick, and there was petition against the actual company. Now, here is a difference why Oxford did it. Oxford and Zeneca went down to these countries as well, because the testing laws are different in the UK and Europe to Africa. So where it is illegal to carry out, for example, without a signed consent form, and that's what was happening when they were being tested in Africa. It was unlawful. The difference of it being unlawful is that the companies had they had a mandate to make sure people signed to know what they were signing for, but there was no laws in the country which said that this and this and this must be followed. So it was unlawful, the act, but because there was no law that was put there where it was illegal here, there was a difference. So they were able to carry out. Now, the point I'm making there is that these people were given the vaccination. They were made ill by the vaccinations. I don't know what the payout was, but the vaccination was not going to be used in those countries. It was for the European market. Now, these vaccination, the people don't need it because they don't have the virus. So these same companies which wouldn't, even though they tested the virus on the vaccination on the people, and they needed a vaccination for the illness, it was not going to be sold in their country. So they never received that the end product after they'd done their testing. The end product was for sale in Europe. Now, these countries in Africa do not have the virus or have very low numbers, yet the same companies are now willing to ship. And as the World Health Organization leader said, they're shipping 2 billion to these countries, and the vaccinations companies, these big companies, have said they're willing to give it for free in perpetuity. They'll, like Oxford and AstraZeneca, they're willing to give it for. What happened in the 90s? So I'm just an ordinary, African descendant sitting here, and I'm trying to figure this all out. What happened in the mindset of these people? Did the people who were responsible for causing these experimentation that caused, death, disease, and maim to these people, were these people removed from their positions, or were they jailed, or did something happen which made them realize we can't do that, and new people stepped into the company that had a different outlook? What happened? What changed? So just from my standpoint and looking, it doesn't make sense. And that's what I'm saying. It's not making sense.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The very science they're pushing, they're going against their own logic. They're going against their own logic that when something is, I mean, they're talking about in the West and North America developing this herd immunity scenario where, okay, if they vaccinate, a certain percentage, there will be natural immunity. Fine, because if they're saying the rate is so high, you can say, if you follow that logic, or if you follow that makes sense. But in Africa, when it's so low, why the vaccine? It just shows us, like I'm saying, the gender is unfolding in front of our very eyes, and this is only one piece of it. This is only one piece of it. When it comes to us as a people, right throughout our history, we can see we are always being under attack, and this is just another way to attack us. So, sadly, we're coming to the end now because we're well after 8 o'clock. But just to say that, I don't know, just the winding up comments on Elder Pepukayi.
Yes, the first thing I want to say, that common sense ain't so common these days. No, a number of each items are raised by Sister Kandake, and this channel need to spend time to look at some of them in some detail. For example, what is nanoparticles? Or people need to investigate that. The Great Reset needs to be looked at closely. Transhumanism needs to look at closely. The fourth industrial revolution needs to, and Agenda 21. We need to spend time so people can understand what is going on. Now, what do we do? A brother, Devon Morgan, wrote a brilliant letter. And I'm saying that we don't have time to even introduce it on the channel this evening. But each one of us should send it to our MP. That letter is very detailed. It asks some very pertinent questions. And that's the first thing we do. The other thing we must do, that we must resist, we must resist, we must resist. There's no way we can follow this directive because, as you said, it don't make science. It's all to do with depopulation. And let us look at this. How do we know that there are not different grades of vaccine? Who's making them? Who's distributing them? Matters. We're not making any. It's all been given to us by people who have shown year in and year out. They want to get rid of us. So I would not be surprised that you don't have different batches of vaccine. These are for the Europeans, these are for the Asians, and this is for the blacks. In fact, this thing about the one that you have to keep at a certain temperature. No, we know that in the black country it's very warm. You could have a situation where the fridge broke down, the transport never reached in time, nobody got a dash for the vaccine. That's no good. And then they will say, oh, it's your fault because you never look after it. You didn't administer it properly. When it's the very vaccine, it's going to be the transporter for these nanoparticles that's going to link us up to the cloud. Because let us make no mistake, it may sound fanciful, it may sound far-fetched, but the points that Sister Kandake outlined is not your ideas, it's not your belief, these are facts that is out there. Some of us may not come across it, but she can tell you where to look. It's there. She never invent reset. She never invent transhumanism. She never invent the fourth industrial revolution. None of those is of her invention or fanciful thinking. It's where white people are pushing the world.
Mm-hmm.
Our parents, and I'll be very quick by the talker, they say, don't trouble Master God's world. That's foolish thinking. The world exists in the whole constellation of existence. But the people, human beings, who in control of this world. And believe it or not, it's a tiny, tiny, tiny little handful. Bill Gates and them, maybe not even number 1,000 people out of over some 8 billion. There probably 1,000 of these people who running things, but they're well organized, they're well resourced, they have a plan. We're not resourced, we don't have the money, because we might spend past sneakers and show off with it. We don't have the organization. So we must begin to reach out. We all know each other, but let's first send out the letter to the MP. Because Brother Devon Morgan has done a fantastic job of putting that letter together. Let's start with that. And let's look at other things that we need to do. But one thing we mustn't do, no vaccine. We must decide how we're gonna legally stop them, push it into our arms.
Okay, so more or less run out of time. So I'll bring in Ndogo Mani. So Sister Kandake, is there any last comments that you would like to make before we go to Ndogo Mani to
Yeah,
change vibration?
yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you. So, Elder Pepukayi, I think it'd be good if you let us know the people if they want to get a hold of Brother Devon's letter. You're making reference to where that can be gotten. So
No,
that
I've got it, and I will circulate it.
right. Okay. So
I've
good.
got the letter. I will
All right.
circulate
So,
it.
as I said, the fourth industrial revolution, it was written by Klaus Schwab. So there's a book about it, but the world is talking about it anyway. He is the founder and executive chairman of the World Economic Forum. Yeah, on how the impending technological revolution will change our lives. We are at the brink of the fourth industrial revolution. Okay, so that's the founder of the executive chairman of the World Economic Forum. So we're talking about the major players here. You might know about it. It's well afoot. The Internet of Things was the other point that from the list that Elder spoke about. Include that. Look up the Internet of Things because it's coming. All right. So get yourself prepared, be aware of what's ahead. That's the way that we can, not only because we don't want to focus all our energies on what they're doing, but it's good to be aware of what's going to happen. But what is our vision? And maybe over time, organizations like the PSM can really help to organize that vision, in a short period of time. We've got lots of organizations that have spent years looking at the teachings of Marcus Garvey, looking at the teachings of other great thinkers in Africa. So we don't have to do all of that again. We have people out there. We have scientists. We can galvanize our people because we have people in these fields. But now it's about bringing everyone together to look at the way forward. So that's all I would say there. Wow.
Okay, so yes, I'd like to thank everybody for this very, very interesting and informative discussion today. And I just hope that points have been brought up and points have been touched upon where anybody watching this program now or at a later date would go and look into some of these things and do your research. I cannot sit here, none of us cannot sit here and say we have the answer. But what we can do is spark your interest to go and start digging, start investigating, because I'm sure we will be very, very surprised that, as Sister Kandake said, most of the information is right in front of our eyes. It's not hidden. It's right there for us. So it's for us to look and see what is going on so we can make plans. And we're not just talking about now we're in 2021. We have to look far, far beyond that. Far, far beyond that, because we're dealing with a system that plans hundreds of years ahead, so we have to develop that mindset as well, that we also plan and look hundreds of years ahead, because as we look at life today, all we see is that wherever we are as a people, we can see that we are under attack. We are the targeted race. Whether it's in China, we find ourselves, we are under attack. Whether it's in India, we find ourselves, we are under attack. Wherever we find ourselves, we're under attack. So we know that people outside of us are united in seeing us as a threat, something to be afraid of. Some, as Biden himself, who's now president, at once used the term, they have to be controlled. There are, and Hillary Clinton, they are feral creatures that must be controlled. So that's where we are. And just before I hand over to Ndogo Mani to close the session, I'd just like to end by This and that is the exact word by paraphrasing a phrase of Marcus Messiah Garvey. And I think Garvey must have uttered this back in the 20s. And when we talk about visionary, somebody who could virtually see into the future and was warning us of things to come, we can see this, what I'm about to say, is more poignant now than ever. And Garvey said, if we are to survive, we must, right? If we are to survive even the next 6 months, we must start to develop this mindset. If we are to survive, we must start to do things through our own efforts, through our own energy. He goes on to say, a people or a race that is dependent, totally dependent on others for its economical, political, social, spiritual survival is a people that sooner or later die. So you can see Garvey was telling us from then, we must develop this mindset where we start to do for self. When viruses hit Africa, such as the Ebola and the AIDS and so forth, one of the things that we are not aware of is that our African traditional doctors are coming up with cures like that, but they have been marginalized and they've been overlooked, and the people have been hoodwinked into the thing that these people are practicing, all these fetishes, so do not go to them. And that's what's been happening. That's what's been happening. So Garvey said, we've got to start looking back to ourselves. We have the answers. We have the answers. Because right then, Senegal, when the AIDS virus was ripping through the people, there was a center there under Dr. Eric Bedoza who developed a cure. And people who was told in the traditional hospital, in the government-run hospitals, that there's nothing more that we can do for you. We have exhausted all our options, nothing more. They went to Bedoza, and most of those people are still alive to this day. If only we can heed what God is saying. So at this point, I'd like to now hand you over to Ndugu Amani, who will end by changing the vibrations for us.
Yes. Asante Sana Ndugu, Asante Sana Dada, and Asante Sana Mze. Everything that needed to be said has been said, so there's nothing more I can add, and it's all been summed up. So I hope we go away and take the messages here and start to act upon them. Okay, so in that mindset, we opened the meeting with a ritual, and then we close that ritual. And any ritual is about action and intent. Nothing happens without us moving towards it, us thinking about it and putting those actions, those thoughts into action. And then we are able to harness our own power and able to shape the universe into what we will it to be, into the manifestation we wish. And so this is action that we must take. And the fact of us coming together across the world, watching this, and our mentality changing and putting things into action, we are starting to do that. We are starting to understand and come together and use our spiritual power, as well as everything else we must generate, and we must be using our political, economic power as well. But at the basis, our spiritual power is what we must be cultivating to give us the direction that we want. What is our vision, as Dada Kandake said? That is based upon our spiritual guidance and our culture. So, in that effort, I'll end. We'll ring the chime. Again, this is for us to change the vibration, to harness the vibration that has been generated but also to give thanks and appreciation to the all and to the powers, the aspects of the all, the powers of the universe, the netters, energies, densities, and the ancestors will come into our presence, into this realm, into this physical realm here, and now to take our intentions with them into their own realms and to help us to manifest those objectives. Okay, but we must have that intention. So it's about focusing upon that, giving those thanks, giving those appreciation, and then using that to put things into action with the confidence that we will receive assistance and signs. So the spirits tell me that I should ring this 8 times. 8 times is for eternity, but it's also for power. So yeah, so it's a very powerful number that we call upon. So allow the vibration to go around you, through you, and over you, and be thinking of the appreciation and the thanks, the power, the coming into birth, the magic. 8 is the power of magic. Magic is basically coming into your own spiritual awareness and understanding your own spiritual power. So as I ring it, sit straight, feet flat on the floor, hands on your thighs, spine straight, your energy centers are in line, and breathe deeply. Again, if you wish to take part, please do. If you don't, that's absolutely fine. Okay, I'll begin and count in Kiswahili to keep time. Moja. Mbili. Tatu. Ine. Tana. Sita. Saba. Nane. Okay, you can open our eyes now, and Duga, I'm going to share my screen. Let me know when you can see it.
Yes,
Yes, we can.
Okay, beautiful. Okay, so we end on the affirmation and words of power. Words of power, the vibration of our voice is incredibly powerful. The intent, all things are mind. All things are the minds of the creator of the all. And when we think of these things and we embody these things and we say these things, we're actually commanding for existence to obey us. So it's very powerful what we're saying. So do take note of what we're saying. And the more power and conviction we say it, the more that we bring it into being. So if you wish to, please then just repeat after me. Nguvu zote.
Nguvu zote.
Kwa watu wetu.
Kwa watu
Kwa
wetu.
watu wetu.
Watu wetu.
Mapenzi ya wote.
Mapenzi ya wote.
Mapenzi ya wote.
Mapenzi ya wote.
Ni mapenzi yetu.
Ni mapenzi
Ni
yetu.
mapenzi yetu.
Ni mapenzi yetu.
Hakuna mwanzo.
Hakuna
Hakuna mwanzo.
Hakuna mwanzo.
Na hakuna mwisho.
na hakuna
Na hakuna mwisho.
Na hakuna mwisho.
Beautiful. Anuk, amen.
Anuk. Amen.
Anuk, amen.
All power to our
Anu. Amen.
All power to our people. The will of the all is our will. There is no beginning and there is no end. I am. Amen. Asanteni sana jamaa.
Asante sana.
Karibu.
Yeah, asante sana ndugu Imani, and asante sana to everybody who tuned in today. And I'd just like to say, as we enter this new year, I can say that the Pan-African Congress movement will seek to go from strength to strength, and we'll be here each Sunday to bring you, to inform you through these meetings. And as this situation continue, and as long as this continue, we'll be on this platform to educate and enlighten and so forth. And even when we go back to so-called normal, because we have now built up such a community on this platform, it is only right that we continue a platform like this, because we know that it is appreciated by many. So until next week, I bid you kwaheri.
Kwaheri.